I'm going to have to pull things back on topic, and now it's time for Consensus to give us their, or rather MetaMask to give us their perspective on the launch. Did you have some slides or something you wanted to present?
You know what, I can just go through your talking points anyways. Taylor evoked so many ideas and so I think a stream of consciousness might be more productive.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I have some basic things I want to get covered. A lot of the things, the types of user. Should I go?
It'll capture the sound better anyway.
Okay, sure. So yeah, a ton of the lessons are the same, so we can compress those ones out. I'll nod to them when they make sense. Some of the lessons are totally unique and might appeal to like status, because you know, MetaMask is like status making. We're a browser. We allow other people to create interfaces to these contracts, and then we just kind of wash our hands of those, which is a curse and a blessing, because then we're dependent on their implementation of an interface. And then at the same time, we don't have to do it completely. So, I'm going to go kind of chronologically. We started, you know, we had a Ropsten beta for a while, and I think what we learned from the Ropsten beta, it was the test network beta of the ENS, is that there was no incentive for people to debug it at all. Like all the bugs existed. There were multiple vulnerabilities. There were multiple performance hitches in the interface, and all these different things. They just didn't get caught at all because nobody cared at all. There's nothing at stake at all. And so maybe there's something they learned there that in a decentralized ecosystem, you know, part of the value is that there is stuff at stake, and it's just a matter of rolling that stake out gradually. I think the soft launch ended up doing that really nicely, where we had, you know, kind of slow burn, and so there was time to catch these problems as we went. So that was fine. And then the fact that we responded quickly when there were a couple vulnerabilities at the very beginning after the initial with Pi Day launch, I thought that was great. That was, in my opinion, it was the first like major success of, like, there'd been this thing after the DAO, like, look, if you just have a good like fail-safe lever, something you can just stop the train with, that's like an incredible security measure in smart contracts, and this was a great example of that just happening smoothly and quickly. And so I couldn't be more happy that happened. You know, of course, you're gonna have some Reddit trolls that are just like, "Oh, see, this proves the whole thing." But you know, they'll say that every time. So just keep halting the train when you need to. Take your time, move slow, because these things, you know, they're immutable once they're out there. So once we had the main launch, yeah, it was an incredible success. A lot like what you said, astronomical. Before that, we've been mostly dealing with developers. You know, MetaMask, we're just teaching people about Web3. We're teaching them about Solidity. You know, and it's all these, you know, geeks, and they come in with their little single-page app, and it's just a lot of fun. And it's like a little workshop the whole time. Suddenly, our Slack and our support tickets were totally displaced from hackers and coders to people who have no idea what they're doing, people who are trying to get rich fast, people who want the tokens. They just read about this in the Wall Street Journal. People, they don't know like what gas is. They need all the basics explained to them. And so like fundamentally, the interfaces that we had were just insufficient for the kinds of users that we're having now. And so we're really you know, building the plane while in motion. This was like a huge, yeah, it was a huge benefit for the whole ecosystem. So MetaMask during this period from the soft launch to now, we've seen like a 90x growth. We've been total hockey stick growth. We're about to cross like 100,000 users. We have solid numbers because it's an extension story. But based on support tickets, I think you guys have like 10 to 50 times as many users as
yeah, because we take on Coinbase.
Yeah, we get a bit of that too. We definitely push back and forth through the exchanges. Yeah. There's a lot of people that say like, oh, I tried to send to an exchange, but they never got it. But yeah. It's like, oh, well, they have a threshold.
From the exchange, and it never sent. And I'm like, okay, that's nice.
Right. Or during or during a big sale that has all of the network clogged up. So that was another way of measuring the success of ENS. Was this is the first time that the Ethereum platform had anything that people cared enough about that when the network was down, it mattered. Right? Before that, there had been attacks. They'd gone weeks at a time. Nobody really cared. It was like, it was a performance optimization. Oh, an exponent is underpriced, you know, things like that. But after this, you know, I forget if it was Bank or EOS, like there were some, you know, just multi-day, you know, network clogs, and multi-day, 3 days is the reveal period in the ENS. So people legitimately weren't able to reveal. People lost money, and they come to us and they complain about that. And I'm here. I'm like, raise your gas price. We had to like whatever we could do. And so capping the gas price, I think that was EOS's innovation. That ended up having is that right? Okay, yeah. So appreciate that. So
but that was Nick's suggestion.
Right.
I both accept approbation and blame in equal measure.
Right.
I think it worked really well for Bancor and less well for Status, and has become irrelevant since then. But,
Right. Yeah.
Didn't Batch also do it?
I think they did, yeah. My personal advice was, I think it was good when it was done the first time. I think Status demonstrated that it had stopped being effective.
It's good until people discover the strategy.
Yes.
Yes.
And
It's good until people react.
And
if
everyone.
you've seen that, I mean, if anyone is interested in the ICO data, like I have spreadsheets of all the transactions for all of them because I find it really interesting. But if you look at BATS, basic attention tokens, their gas prices were through the roof. People were sending at like 100,000 GUA gas price. Like, so I think in that one, like 100 or 200,000 USD at the time was like just spent on lost gas. And there's one guy who lost like $6,000, spent $6,000 on a failed transaction.
Yeah.
So I will say this, I think it's better if we like clog the network for a day than like continued that motion. Like okay, let's clog the network, like stop, and then I think that we'll find a balance, or we'll just maybe stop doing ICOs. What about that? No?
Maybe blockchain scalability is the way to go.
Well, I think you're right. A gas ceiling, I think, is useful because it allows people to go over it as well. So, for example, the ENS, people could have gone over a gas limit if you had a 60 gigabyte gas limit. You can go above that if you've got an ENS transaction you really want to get through. There's no gas limit. You cannot do that because, like we say, people out there are richer than you.
I feel bad for Status because they actually proposed the gas limit first, and I saw that and went, "Hey, that's a great idea, Bancor. You should do that." And then subsequently kind of ruined it for Status.
I'm not sure that's a good idea because like the whole issue is that like if you want to get rid of the queue, you have to get lots of spots, right?
Yeah.
You can't just like pay a higher price, right? So you pay a higher price up until the limit, after which point your only choice is to spend the network. And so maybe like we don't want to incentivize taking the network down. And also not incentivize so basically I think the main way that happens is because of these race conditions. But anyways.
Back to ENS.
It's maybe worth keeping in mind for our ENS design the fact that the network can be down for a reveal period, and so maybe it shouldn't be hard coded to an amount of time. Maybe there should be something dynamic. I don't know. Maybe 3 days after the first reveal or something, because then So I don't know. Just ripping. But the point is, the network is not a guaranteed uptime anymore. Maybe it will be. It will be in a second. Yeah, because
eventually.
Okay. So something that MetaMask had to deal with that you didn't have to deal with at all is we were using the ENS registrar DApp. So this was, I think, Nick and Alex, and we got to leverage a lot of their code. So I copy pasted a lot of their code and then republished as modules. So the ENS name hash and things like that, and got really good tests. And have really great tests. Like testing for Ethereum is amazing. You just spin up a test chain and then you just run lots of stuff on it. It's great. But also there were issues with that UI, and so I'm just gonna give some examples. People wouldn't save their backup files. The original version of the page didn't make people download the backup files, so people wouldn't have backups. They would purge their hard drive. They would.
Why did you do that?
Well, people just wipe their hard drive. That's it. You don't deal with people, do you? People just wipe their hard drives.
You're fine.
Yeah.
They
They get a new computer. And the official registrar DApp didn't really make the secret phrase obvious. So one of the things I finally registered my first name with me recently, and one of the things I really like is you make all the fields very explicit, kind of like you were saying here. So by making, trying to hide things is a place where you're going to make people confused. The official registrar DApp does that to a degree that I think people actually get a little naive. They're not really sure what's happening. They think they have it backed up, but in fact, they may not have the secret phrase backed up, or they might not have the amount backed up, because they may download the JSON file before they transmit the transaction, which is a thing that still happens.
It will save it there, but it's not always automatically recovered. It's the problem. And I think this is a good time to point out, like, maybe the new folks will be offended at this, but I think they excel at designing things that are the simplest thing that can possibly work. And the result is that it's really robust and it tends to fail safe. Whereas more sophisticated approaches like the registrar app tries to take attempt to be more user-friendly and attempt to hide more of the innards from people, but in the process, when they fail, they're less likely to fail safe.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would say that that's done on purpose at this point. And as we bring more people onto the team, like, you're gonna start seeing things that I don't like, because I like building Ethereum for developers. Like, I like that a lot. But we have to grow up and stuff, so we'll see.
It will only become worse with time. What we do right now is technical.
Yes. So I think there was a lesson in there for just when we were releasing a first interface for a thing. So MetaMask, since we're not developing our own thing, we're just like totally at the mercy of whatever Web3 compatible websites are created. And so we just we have to just beg everybody who's making UIs, try the simple, try copying UI or something. Because we had a lot of support requests related to complexities of that, error states that wouldn't be easily resolved when you back up the file at the wrong time, you upload it, now you can't reveal. There's things like that. And and issues are kind of clogged up on that repository. There's a lot of stuff just not moving there. So it's hard to support software that's not getting supported. So we've been doing a lot of support. We're learning how to do support. I think Mute does a lot more than us. We're, I think, up to like 50 a day or something, which is really overwhelming. So we're like hiring full-time support. So
you're like 1,000 a day.
Don't get there. Because they did it right. Like, we made the mistake of putting that email address on the site so early on, and you guys were like, nah,
They're like,
you have to go track down the Slack.
It's a huge wall.
That's what our first support person told us. Our first consultant for support said, make it hard as heck for people to email you. And now when you see that, go when you try to go email Coinbase or Kraken, they make you jump through 8 hoops to get a message to them. That's why. It's genius. Except I was like, duh, I love it when there's an email address in the footer, therefore I'll put my email address in the footer. Don't do that.
Search our knowledge base first. Did you find that? No. And answer this question, proving that you searched. Things like that. So that's fun stuff. I think you covered most of the infrastructural stuff. It's just kind of a user understanding thing. If we can make interfaces that make it obvious what's happening, I think people are ready to take those on. But at the same time, we have to keep them really simple. So that's what I'll be coming to this weekend with, an eye for simplicity, but one-to-one mapping of the reality underneath, right? So honesty, something like that. I did feel like I didn't go nearly as long, but Taylor covered a lot of the user confusion that were happening. So any questions?
I would like you to talk a little bit about when you were developing the I know you did the ENS name hash libraries and that kind of stuff early on. Is there anything that you learned while building those not necessarily the dApp, but the libraries themselves and going through the code and stuff?
Yeah. So I'm a really lazy reader, so my way of learning ENS was to write a library for it. Sorry. So I wanted my own abstraction. A lot of it was initially copy pasted, but then reformatted and organized, and so going through name hash. I mean, one of the great things is Nick really had a clean kind of validation thing. So we're not doing registration through our interface, so I didn't need to worry about the dots. But in terms of just making sure the characters are valid, they break up into the right number of bytes, and then recursively breaking them up by periods. So the name hash function is kind of interesting. Make sure that every name has a unique name hash. It's clever. It's obscured, but then it makes sure that you can own a super domain and then rent out subdomains. Writing up the libraries. So we inject the Web3 API. I don't know if people are web developers here. So the JavaScript API is evolving right now. I know Fabian just released Web3 1.0 recently, and so it's got some more abstractions that I think are much friendlier to JavaScript. So it's got like promises and events and stuff like that. The old Web3 didn't do that, so that's kind of what I was adding. Is I just wanted promises. I wanted like ens.lookup this name .then and then give me the address, right? So that was my goal was to. I wrote that test first. I was like, that's what I want. Like, and I wanted to prove that ENS could do that for me, and it could. But to do that, you have to learn about the distinction between the registrar and the resolver. And I don't know if those can be more transparently represented to users or whatever, because I mean, even the notion that ENS today is just one registrar, right? Like, the truth is we could have any number of registrars. And that's one of my solaces. Like when we start talking about making governance systems, I'm like, how do we know we don't just like make some horrible fascist thing? Well, we can always have another, have another TLD and then make that, other, I would love to see one that's like prediction market driven at one point. It's this crazy resolver. It's always rotating, whatever. Don't worry about it. And then we can, because we could have lots of TLDs with their own systems and we can experiment with them and let the ones that are most useful rise to the top. ENS can just be our initial kind of gift and effort to the ecosystem. So yeah, that's cool. I agree. I haven't seen nearly enough subdomain stuff. I think Nick did like the first big one. It's just like, here, just get a subdomain. It's free. Just have first come, first serve.
Give me the .eth.
Which one is it?
Give me the .eth.
Give me the ETH. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, same as me. MetaMask wants to do our own, like, we want to just make it easy. Like, it should be integrated. Everyone should get a name.
Just get it.
Yeah. But,
Aragon is the one that they got the company.eth, and I think they have like some big plans and business plans with that, so that'll be interesting to see.
Oh, maybe they'll like validate your company's name, so
I don't know. Does anyone know?
Yeah.
Hey, how are you?
The plan is like for the full company registry, your name will be like your ENS subdomain, and you will be able to have it on company.eth or organization.eth if you don't like the negative connotation of the word company. It's just like an organization.
But yeah, I think two things. One is, and this is a general ENS question for later, is do we want to have multiple TLDs? Or do we want to have just our existing TLD, a bunch of names, and then we can do sub-registrars and sub-resolvers that will work off something like you guys are going to do. That gives us an awful lot more flexibility. And I think my point of view is I think it's a better way of going, because we're never going to be able to build a registrar that runs beneath that will meet everyone's requirements and everyone's needs. Obviously, is it an auction? Is it first come, first served? Is it some kind of mix, like we say, do we pick it on the day of the week? But being able to open that up to subdomains, which obviously the system can do, like I say, it hasn't been used much yet, but it's a very powerful way of doing things, where you can both have sub-registrars for whatever you want for registering subdomains, and then sub-resolvers for resolving, again, differently those names inside. That's pretty powerful. I think it'll start showing up some of the issues where people implemented the initial resolvers, where they've just picked the resolver and rather than actually looking it up. But we'll get through those as well. Although again, it's back to we were saying, we want to pop a test harness. We need subdomains out there with their own resolvers, and people can go and test it and actually have a real test harness against which they can beat their libraries to make sure they're actually doing what they should be doing. But I think like we said, you want multiple top-level domains. You want just our existing top-level domain with a bunch of names, and then worry at the subdomain level as to how we do things. It's one of those probably big questions that would be nice to get sometime over this weekend in terms of ENS philosophy.
I mean, I think part of what the difference in how subdomains work on this is an argument against more top-level domains because we don't actually need them. Like, you need more top-level domains than like normal domain name systems because there's a fixed depth. Everybody gets to own the top, and they have to own everything underneath it too. Whereas that's not how this works. So the amount of names that can be owned in this system is drastically higher.
I think the parent, Nick will correct me from that, I thought the parent of a subdomain can reassign ownership.
But you can assign ownership to something that can't reassign ownership.
Yes.
No, because it's a top level, because it's set subnode. isn't there?
Yes, but you can commit ownership of your, in the case of a .eth name, a second level domain, you can commit ownership to a deed of the deed to a contract that restricts what you're allowed to do with it.
Yes.
And that's one major thing. One thing I'd like to set aside workshop time for is how we can permit that in order to ensure user safety while still allowing for upgrades to the permanent registrar, because that's a major problem at the moment for anyone seeking to do that.
Yeah, I'm really worried about subdomains. That's why we haven't done it yet. Because I haven't had like the brain power to like sit down and think about how Fisher's next year, or some other person who sets up a subdomain based on like our contract or whatever, what the unintended consequences of that could be. Because you could do bad things if you wanted to. Yeah.
In terms of, sorry, can I just get a clarification on the terminology thing? Because I'm the guy coming out of the legacy DNS space. So registries, where I come from, are like the entity that operates a top level domain, like com, net, biz, right? And then the registrars interface with the registries, and the end users go through the registrars to get to the registries.
Yep.
So the way I hear the term registrar being used here is like a registrar. On one hand, they're the ones that set owner on a .eth domain name. They're the ones that sort of register it. But then I creating a registrar, which to me means that we're using that part of running the .eth in the context of how I understand the registry to work. And I don't know if there is a differentiation or if I'm quibbling but I get confused every time I hear it. So
the terms are similar but not entirely the same as in DNS. ENS has a single registry, which is a central contract that has a map between every name and who owns it, and also what the resolver is for it. So that is the ENS registry. And the registrars are any contract that's responsible for a domain and is able to hand out subdomains. So in that sense, it's very like the DNS registrar, and that it's responsible for creating new subdomains. But there is only one registry, and that's an entirely automated contract. So I guess in DNS terms, it takes over the registrars take over some of the responsibility of the registry in DNS world.
But the registrar could also have a registry of subdomains.
It could, but the actual subdomains would still be stored in the main ENS registry.
Okay.
It could have its own internal record keeping for those subdomains.
Okay.
I really hope nobody starts talking about that as a registry, because then it becomes irrevocably complicated, I think.
Call them sub-registries, I suppose.
Yeah, that of course that still creates confusion between whether that's actually part of the same thing as the ENS registry or not. Any other insights from MetaMask?
The air conditioner is not keeping up with this.
Yeah.
We want it.
Yeah.
There should be someone coming with it.
Cool.
So if we had one perfect top level domain, I think I would be super happy with the idea that, okay, let's just .eth and that's it, and then everything else you just nest underneath. But if we're gonna have uncertainty about whether is the best or then there might be some debate about the benefit from diversity and having choices and trying different things. Although